Could there be life similar to our own on other planets? Is it not possible that atmospheric conditions of relative environments control their shapes and forms? If so, would they be giants, or could perhaps the opposite be true?
Hi. Okay, that was strange. Hi. Welcome to the Fans Guide to Animation podcast. This is where we talk about animated things that we like and animated things that we don't like. I'm Daniel.
Lieutenant Dan!
And this is Anthony.
Hey, Tony!
And today we're going to be talking about my favorite animated movie of all time. This is definitely my favorite. I think it's my favorite movie of all time, actually.
Ooh, now that's some high praise right there.
Yeah, I know.
Man.
I have very discerning taste.
Bullshit!
But yeah, I've loved this movie for years. I don't think I saw it in the theater, actually. I saw it like when it came on TV, and then like I think it came out on Cartoon Network a fair amount when they used to play like just random animated movies on there. And
if you can find a clip, Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater. That was what it was
Cartoon
called.
Theater.
Yeah, if you can find a clip, put that in there. That'd be great.
Welcome to Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater.
Yeah.
Anytime I would come over to your house, I remember coming on a Friday or Saturday night or something. I don't know if we ever saw the Iron Giant together back then, but I know I saw it. I think my family rented it once or something, and I did not see it in the theater. Vaguely, I just don't have a lot of connection, unfortunately, with this movie. I'm going to be honest with you people.
Oh, the shame of it.
But I appreciate it so much now.
But yeah, every time I passed by it on TV, like growing up, I would stop and watch the whole movie. Like I couldn't not, because every time I never got tired of it, and I still don't. One of the reasons we're talking about it now is because it is actually the 20th anniversary of the movie. So it is directed by Mr. Brad Bird. We've talked about this guy a lot because he's kind of like, he's one of the only known directors of animated movies. Like a lot of them have like directors that, are just...
They're just doing the job,
because
nobody really recognizes
it's more of a managerial position than an actual directing position.
Especially in the world of animation, you don't hear a lot about a particular style or substance, that a director can bring to an animated project compared to a live action one. Where if you see a live action movie and if you see like a Guillermo del Toro movie, you'll know, that's him. That creature effects, everything, boom, that's him. But when you think about an animation director, I'm sure there's a few like Brad Bird that stick out, but if you really sit down and think, you have to do research. You really don't recall a lot of them as much as you would think you would. Like if you tell me right now, like, name the director of Beauty and the Beast, the original, not the garbage one.
Oh, ouch.
Anyway, I wouldn't be able to tell you. So there, it's a fantastic movie, but nobody really thinks about the directors in terms of animation, unfortunately.
So the movie is his first full-length anything. It was based on a book, The Iron Man. It was written by Ted Hughes. He was the husband of Sylvia Plath, and this is going to get a little dark, but Sylvia Plath is known for having severe depression and then eventually killing herself. So he wrote this book to comfort his kids after that happened. But yeah, so a lot of the material in this movie is actually really grounded in real life things that aren't necessarily like happy things. I think everybody kind of, even if they don't say it's like the best animated movie of all time, they say it's one of the best animated movies of all time. However, it bombed at the box office, and to dissect why, The Lion King, we're going to bring it back to The Lion King. So The Lion King came out in 94. And The Lion King made $44 million in its opening, which isn't that much compared to today. However, that is adjusted for inflation. It is 96 in today's dollars, so 96 million,
a lot.
which is unheard of for an animated movie at that time. At that time, that was the most an animated movie had ever made. So after that, the studios realized that, oh, there's actually money in animated movies, so we should get on board with making some animated movies. So Warner Brothers decided that even though they have like the Looney Tunes and all of that, they never really ventured out into making the movies.
They were always focused on clearly a lot of just animated television more than anything, especially in the early 90s.
So their first one was actually Space Jam.
Welcome to the Space Jam.
I mean, that technically wasn't a bomb. It was not.
Yeah, it was terrible.
did
It was a good
okay.
start. But their second was Quest for Camelot.
Ooh, Christ, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
That, you know what? I'm sad to say, I think I remember going to the theater for that one.
Well, you were one of the only ones.
You know what? No, it was in the Dollar Theater. And
Well, yeah, that's where it belongs.
Ouch! Ouch, Charlie!
That movie tanked. Like, it tanked so hard that it made the studio reconsider making animated movies. So, because it did so bad, the studio, when this movie was coming out, had already kind of decided that they were going to, like, nix the whole animated thing, and they were kind of, like, pretending like it didn't happen, essentially.
God.
So they didn't put any money into the marketing so that way it could just, like, go
Just kinda
away.
Pop up and go away.
Yeah, so that way they can put all the money towards, like, their other, whatever they're doing. And so that's kind of why, for the most part, why it did so bad. Because, like, it got good reviews. Like, people back then knew it was good. But, like, nobody knew about it. So, in 2017, I think, they came out with, like, the Blu-ray special super big, amazing edition of the Iron Giant. And along with that, they made a documentary, an hour-long documentary on the making of the Iron Giant and why it did so bad. And then it's like it even goes into Brad Bird's history, like it starts from when he was a kid. So his actual first film, not full length, but his first film, animated movie that he made was when he was 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for him.
So after he made it, he sent it to Disney because back then you could just do that, and they saw it, and they gave him an internship at the age of 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
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 So this was back in like the early 70s.
But also, if I'm not mistaken, like, I think it was around the late 60s when Disney himself passed away.
Yeah, he died in like the late 60s, I think.
And from there, I'm pretty sure they're like, guys, we need to find the next big thing. Come on, and like that kid. Okay, we'll take him in. Like,
yeah, 70s were a rough time for Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was essentially being mentored by the same animators that did the Jungle Book and 101 Dalmatians and Sword in the Stone and all of that. That would explain why he's so good now.
And why he's still with Disney to this day.
Yeah. So, years pass, and he graduates high school. So he actually goes to work for Disney, like officially. And turns out he hates it. Because, again, like we said, 70s was after Walt had died, so the entire studio...
They were thinking they were going to shut down at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, was doing some not great movies, and they were making some decisions that were just dumb. So he was vocal about that, and he got fired. Tim Burton, he also left because of the same reason, and
Yeah.
Don Bluth, he also left because of the same reason. So after that, he went and did some other stuff like The Simpsons and The Critic, which we just talked about, and King of the Hill, and did a little bit here and there for that. And then after that, there was, got the ball rolling, and certain people, he got their attention, and that's when they gave him the Iron Giant. Warner Brothers was like a relatively new animation studio, at least for movies. So a lot of the talent would have already been taken. So it was
So Brad Bird just did it all by himself.
He didn't do it by himself.
I know.
But all the people that worked on it were basically like underdogs. They were the people that couldn't get the jobs at this, that, or the other. So that's really
it's truly
inspiring.
An underdog story for the movie itself. And
So the movie is essentially about. So it's like a 50s retro science fiction-y.
It almost feels like one of those homages to a lot of that science fiction era of the Forbidden Planet and stuff like that. Just that very imagery is very similar to that. It's clearly emulating that a lot. Right down to the Iron Giant himself. Just very retro looking, and of course it takes place in the 50s, so it just kind of enhances it more. So
I love the 50s.
Yeah,
it's just such a great time. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, don't quote me on that. But
Too late.
it's a fun period to revisit if you take away all of the racism. So yeah, it's about a killer space robot who doesn't want to be a killer space robot, and he is helped by a young boy who teaches him what life is really about. He teaches him to be more human, kind of like basically all movies nowadays with the robot in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the movie starts out in space because he is from space.
Now when you say in space, you gotta go in space.
Pigs in space!
It starts with a meteor heading towards the Earth, and it's very exciting. This is in contrast to the Rockadoodle when that started in space.
Oh man.
So it crashes into the ocean, and there's this fishing boat there. There's this big storm happening, so you can't really see what's going on. The waters are all choppy. So the fisherman comes out of the boat, looks around, and he thinks he sees a lighthouse off in the distance. But when he looks, the lighthouse starts to turn towards him, and it's two eyes, two big glowing eyes, instead of the one lighthouse eye. So that's cool, first of all. That gave me a very 50s science fiction kind of vibe, where it's there's an unknown monster in the shadows with glowing eyes. The boat crashes, and then the giant disappears. The meteor was the giant, and the thing in the shadows was the giant. So the movie is set in a small New England town. It's a fishing city. So first of all, the backgrounds in this movie are so good. They're all hand painted, and if you just look at all of them, it feels so warm and homey.
Oh, homie.
And
It's very cozy.
yeah, it's very cozy. It's a very cozy looking movie.
I love the malt shop place that they're at some point or whatever, the little diner or whatever it is.
the diner for the mom
Yeah,
works.
there's a reason why that's part of Americana and stuff. Why people kind of have a lot of throwback places.
God, we don't have any diners, do we? I
Nothing
mean, we have
quite
things called diners, but they're not actual.
We don't have
diners.
anything a throwback kind of to that era. Where
Yeah, Texas is lacking in diners. We should make a change.org petition.
Yeah, we should.
But anyway, this is when we see Hogarth. Hogarth Hughes. He is the main character. So Hogarth is about 10. He has a very Richie Cunningham vibe from Happy Days. So
Wait, do the kids at home know what Happy Days is?
I mean, yeah, that's a valid question. I don't think they do. So it's voiced by a kid named Eli Marenthal, who didn't really do much else, but he's really great in this role.
He really is good. For a performance like this, it's always tough for child actors to be any good in general.
Johnny, that really hurt.
I did see that. Yeah, he didn't do much of else, and I'm pretty sure it's because of the movie. But
the one other thing that's kind of notable was he was Stifler's little brother.
Fuckers. How you doing, boys?
So Hogarth is very excitable. He's energetic. He talks a lot.
Hey, Mom, you won't believe our good luck. guess what I found?
Hogarth, we've been through this before. No pets.
Oh, but he's not a pet, Mom. He's a friend.
Hogarth.
So he goes to the mom's diner. That's where we are introduced to his mom, Annie Hughes. She is voiced by Jennifer Aniston. And she does a pretty good job. She doesn't get a lot to do in the movie. But
she's just the concerned mom.
So she's a single mom. So Hogarth is an only child. They don't say this in the movie, but his father's passed away. I'm assuming it's like boat related, fishing related, because it's a fishing town. I don't know, but he brings in a stray squirrel as a pet because Hogarth, like adopting like woodland creatures and trying to make them like his pets. So this becomes like a little hint of what's gonna come later. Like he's gonna adopt the Iron Giant. He's gonna make him his pet.
He's gonna get a ridiculously giant squirrel, isn't he?
Yeah, Iron Giant's just a big squirrel. So the squirrel gets loose, and then that's when we meet Dean for the first time. So yeah, it crawls up his pants.
Found your pet.
Where?
It's up my leg, man. Squirrel's in my pants, Hogarth.
And then the fisherman that was in the boat from earlier, he walks into the diner and he's like telling people like this story about a giant robot or like beings from
I saw it, I tells you.
Yeah, basically like he's a salty sailor that that is crazy.
I called the government in Washington about it. Maybe it was a Sputnik or a invader from Mars. That's what it is. It's an invader from Mars.
Then we go to Hogarth. So yeah, he's home alone and he hears a noise. So it's nighttime, by the way. So he goes outside and the TV, it like stopped working. That's why he went outside. So it was the antenna. The antenna looks like it was bitten off. So
that's not average situations.
That
right
would
there
explain
at all.
why your TV's not working.
Yeah.
And then you see these giant footprints like leading into the woods. These hints are very
I think the
obvious.
bravery of this kid, because he just bolts it to the forest. Like, this kid's got some stones, man. Like,
yeah, like
most people are just
giant footprints.
Just like, nope, just run the other way.
But it's like more of like a testament to his character. Like he's a very curious kid, you know.
Yeah, he's just like giant footsteps. My
And,
antenna's bitten off.
Yeah, and he's like
time for adventure.
He's super into like the science fiction movies, so he's like, ooh, what if it's aliens? So yeah, so he goes off into the woods. He ends up at a power station where Giant comes out from behind him. So he sneaks up on him, and then he starts chasing him. But he's not actually chasing him. He's going to the power plant because he eats metal. And obviously the power station is electric, and that's not good. So when he reached out to grab it, he got shocked. But Hogarth, he started to run away, but then he kind of like started to feel bad for the giant.
Yeah, he's just getting shocked and just
because like the giant is like there like screaming in pain essentially.
Yeah.
And the giant's voiced by Vin Diesel.
This was probably like one of his first anything really, because I think it wasn't until the first Fast and Furious movie, which wasn't until
that's 2000,
2000 right? Something like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this was probably like one of his first biggest roles. And then he'll do the same thing as Groot.
Yeah.
I'm Groot.
No, that's exactly what you just said. How's that even possible?
But yeah, Hogarth feels bad for him, so there's this big switch that just says on and off. Like, how convenient. Like on the outside of the power station. Like, why would they not cover that up? I don't know. But he turns off the power, and the giant is let free, I guess. But he falls down, and Hogarth goes and checks up on him, and turns out he's not dead, and Hogarth is kind of the first thing he sees. So it's kind of like one of those, like a dog imprinting on or a monkey imprinting on like a human because it's like raised by a human, or
You finally made a monkey. Yes, we finally made a monkey.
Yeah, Hogarth also breaks his BB gun here. This is important for later. Yeah, the giant is actually entirely CG. The rest of the movie is all hand drawn and everything. But the giant's the only thing that's like actually like fully CG.
Honestly, it's tough to tell. I really thought it was 2D animated for the longest time. but it's very seamless. That just proves, especially for the budget they had, like just interaction with the CG character with the 2D animated character, it's pretty seamless throughout.
Yeah, and especially considering like when it came out.
Yeah.
It was really smart of them to do it like he's very angular.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like super complicated or anything. Like all of
and
his things
movements
were
are kind of stilted a little bit too.
Yeah,
but that makes sense for the character.
He's about 3 stories high, and he's like kind of clunky. And he's got this like big muppety mouth. But yeah, it was smart because he's basically just made up of a bunch of shapes, so that would have been easy for them to make in CG. So the giant, like they don't necessarily tell you this, but the giant, he's presumably sent to Earth to take it over and for like whatever alien race sent him. He's like a weapon. But when the giant got electrocuted, it fried some of his circuitry.
Kind of essentially just gave him a bit of a amnesia situation, I guess.
Hogarth runs away after that. He goes back home and he tells his mom what he saw, and she doesn't believe him. So it cuts back to the diner, and Dean is back at the diner. So Dean is voiced by Harry Connick Jr., and he doesn't sing at all in this movie, even though Harry Connick Jr. is known for his singing.
Yeah, he's known for singing. But one of the things that I was surprised with, like he pulled off like that cool like 50s era guy pretty well, like down to the almost an accent almost.
Why is a nice girl like you serving coffee to a guy like me?
Either way, he pulled off like a pretty fun character to watch.
Dean is like a beatnik. Yeah, he also owns a scrapyard, and he uses a lot of it for his art. Cut to the introduction of Kent Mansley. He is the antagonist of this movie. He works for the government in the unexplained phenomena department. So he's basically like Mulder from X-Files if he was a dick.
Let's put it this way. Every once in a while, things happen that just can't be rationalized in a conventional way. People want to know that their government has a response. I am that response.
So he's voiced by Christopher McDonald. You might recognize his voice or that man from Happy Gilmore. He was Scooter.
Yeah, I know it.
Scooter McGavin.
There we go. I think it's McGavin. No, wait. Wasn't it Shooter?
Shooter McGavin? Something like that. Anyway, you know what we're talking about.
Happy Gilmore. He was the dick in that movie also.
Yeah, he was amazing in that movie. That movie's amazing.
You're in big trouble, though, pal. I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast?
No.
And his voice is just great.
Yeah.
It's just so great. He has
like,
so much character in his voice.
It's like he has this calm and collected side of himself, but when he lets loose, like there's just so much character to him that it's just great to watch or listen to.
He is investigating, and they give him what they found, which was half of a broken BB gun. And it says Hog Hug on it. And yeah, that'll be important for later also. So Hogarth goes back to the forest to look for the giant. And then he finds them, and Hogarth kind of trips, and this is when the giant and him have like their first interaction, because he's running away from it, so he's kind of scared of it at this point. So the giant doesn't do anything. He just like sits down, and then whenever Hogarth starts doing something, the giant kind of mimics him. So that's when we get the idea of like, oh, like this thing is harmless essentially. So this is when he asks him like, where are you from? But the giant doesn't remember the whole amnesia thing. And then you see like the little bumpy on his head. Okay, like he got damaged in there, and the little bumpy means like brain damage.
He got brain damage.
Yeah.
So, where are you from? You came from the sky, right? From up there? Don't you remember anything? Maybe it's that bump on your head.
Hogarth essentially starts treating him like a dog, and he's telling him like, okay, now you stay here, and Giant like doesn't listen. And that's when they cross the train tracks. The Giant sees the metal on the train tracks, and he decides he wants to eat it. But a train is coming.
Oh no!
Oh no! So he has to put the train tracks back, like in like straight, or else the train's gonna derail. And he's having a real hard time getting it like exactly straight. And then the train hits him.
That's fine! Leave it alone! The train is coming! The train is coming! Come on, let's go! Oh no, 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 no.
It looks like he dies, essentially, because his like arm like comes off or something like that. But then like all his pieces like start coming back, and then
they're
just
essentially
reattach
just
him.
like it's almost like a regenerating feature of some kind.
It's like he has
little parts come back and reform himself again.
Mm-hmm. After that, Hogarth takes him to his barn. That's where he
Good
stays.
thing for giant barns back then.
Yeah, everybody had a barn. It's weird. So this is when we realize that the Giant's hand is still missing. We cut to them back at like eating dinner, Hogarth and his mom, and then they hear a knock at the door, and it turns out it is Mr. Kent Mansley, and he's just asking like for a phone. That's when Hogarth realizes the hand that was missing is inside the house.
So a giant hand just roaming around.
Yeah, no,
yeah, a little suspicious, isn't it? You know,
yeah, and again, like
weird.
the hand is walking around kind of like it's like a big dog. Even though it's like a giant metal hand, it would make a lot of noise. So, Kent calls the general.
Hell, you get me a photograph of this thing and I could probably get some troops over there. But you tell me you've got a feeling.
All right, then, fine. You want evidence? I'll get you evidence. And when I do, I'm gonna want a memo distributed.
That sounds swell,
I'm
Kent.
gonna want that memo carbon copied and redistributed.
So as he is driving away, so he looks at the BB gun, and since it says Hog Hug, it finally like clicks in his head like,
Hogarth? An embarrassing name. Might as well call him Zeppo or something. What kind of a sick person would name a kid Hogarth? Hog! Hogarth News!
This is when it becomes a little crazy, just a little bit.
Yeah, no, he's definitely crazy. Hogarth goes back to the barn to read the Giant like a bedtime story, and he takes out comics. He sees the Giant sees the Superman comic in there. You also see the Atomo comic. There's a lot of messages in this like.
There's
exchange.
just like a lot of little layers to that scene.
Yeah.
Just
yeah. I wrote down like, never judge a book by its cover. Don't let anyone tell you who you are. You're not bad because people say you're bad. So it's like a Wreck-It Ralph kind of thing.
And I say, Zangief, you are a bad guy. But this does not mean you're a bad guy.
The Giant gets hungry, so that's when he does eat metal, and a certain somebody owns a junkyard. So Hogarth takes the Giant to Dean's junkyard to basically just eat whatever. It's basically like a big old buffet. And
you gotta get some roughage in, you know?
Mm-hmm. You gotta get that iron in your diet, you know? This is when Dean wakes up, and Hogarth needs to distract him. I don't know why, but Hogarth agrees to drink coffee, and he's 10.
So she moved me up a grade because I wasn't fitting in, so now I'm even more not fitting in. I was getting good grades, you know, like always. So my mom said, you need stimulation. And I go, no, I'm stimulated enough right now.
That's for
So she
sure.
goes,
And this is actually, this specific scene was animated by Brad Bird, because I believe he likes to animate one scene in all of his movies. So in all of his movies, there's one scene that he does himself. After Hogarth starts talking about like bullies at school or something stupid, Dean says, this is when we hear this quote for the first time.
Look, it's really none of my business, kid, but who cares what these creeps think, you know? They don't decide who you are, you do. You are who you choose to be.
And that line has really like stuck with me like for my entire life. It's probably one of the more powerful messages in the movie. And that's when Dean hears the giant outside, so he freaks out. And then Hogarth tries to convince him that the giant is,
he's cool.
He's cool,
He's
Yeah. Dean reluctantly agrees, and then the giant has a new home, not just in a barn. So next day, there's a room that they are having rented out, and guess who decides to rent out the room? Agent Kent Mansley again, because now he knows that Hogarth is hiding something. So he keeps bothering Hogarth, essentially. And his mom tells him to show Mr. Mansley the sights. And so they go to the diner for milkshakes, because that's just what you did back then. So Mansley starts explaining to him what this could be and what it all means, and it shows you how paranoid he is.
What are you talking about?
What am I talking about? What am I talking about? I'm talking about your gold-armed security, Hogarth! While you're snoozing in your wooded jammies back in Washington, we're wide awake and worried. Why? Because everyone wants what we have, Hogarth. Everyone. You think this middleman is fun, but who built it? The Russians, the Chinese, Martians, Canadians? I don't care! All I know is we didn't build it, and that's reason enough to assume the worst and blow it to kingdom come.
And how paranoid people were back then. This was in the 50s.
Yeah, that was peak UFO crazy back then.
Yeah, and
hence why there was so much influential movies made at the time of that whole genre, because the people in general were just really eating that up, and just conspiracies and everything back in the day.
Yeah, because this was after World War II had ended. So the whole McCarthyism had just finished. So people were paranoid about everybody being a communist. And then it started to move over to the Russians. Unfortunately, the whole racism thing made people just more paranoid of each other. So yeah, that all kind of comes through in his weird rant.
Still a cool time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was still a cool time. They had cool cars back then, though. Then you see Hogarth crushing up little pieces of chocolate into it and saying this is the best way to do it. But it turns out that it's Chocolax, which is laxatives. And then he has to go potty. And then Hogarth just leaves. And so Dean and the giant in the scrapyard when Hogarth gets back. And
yeah, he was hoping to make his art.
Yeah, that's when the Dean and the giant became friends, I guess. So they have this couple scenes where they start doing fun kid stuff. He gets in a car, and then the giant picks up the car, and it's he's flying in a flying car essentially, or in a spaceship.
That seemed kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah. And then they go to the lake, and that's when the giant jumps into the lake, and then all the water in the lake spills out, and then there's a flood.
Honestly, my favorite was Dean's reaction, which was nothing.
Yeah,
it was just nothing. He just kind of ended up floating through.
He just accepted it, and when he saw it,
and he landed near the road instead of where he was at.
Yeah, and he was holding on to his chair the whole time.
Hey!
Yeah?
You're right in the middle of the road!
Yeah?
All right.
Then one of the more important scenes in the movie is the deer scene. Hogarth and the giant, they see a deer. And the giant obviously isn't very familiar with what animals are. So the giant starts reaching out and almost touching it, the deer doesn't run away or anything. But then you hear something, and then the deer...
I call bullshit on that, though. They will go anywhere the second you just hear a little crick. That was bullshit.
All right, this is true. But it's supposed to be
giant metal man.
He's
the deer's very
just a very cool, gentle creature, just like the deer is, so they have a connection. It's for the movie, all right? The deer runs away, and then you hear a gunfire in the distance, a shot. And then the giant walks over, and then you see the deer dead on the ground.
I think another thing that I'm kind of leading back to the context clues of, about his own family. A 10-year-old, I'm sure seeing a dead deer would be kind of terrified a little bit and just be freaking out. Oh my God, it's a dead deer. But the kid took time to tell his giant robot friend that, it's dead. It's his life is over, and...
I know you feel bad about the deer, but it's not your fault. Things die. 'It's part of life. It's bad to kill. 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 It's bad to but it's not bad to die.
But that was actually a very more in-depth moment that I guess thought, because I'm like, wait, how can not very many kids can explain the idea of death and telling, like, even though if he's talking to a giant robot, but like not many kids would just actually take the time to say, oh, it's sad, but it happens. And so it's a very sentimental moment that I think, beautifully done.
Yeah.
Like,
so this particular part of the movie, and one of the messages of the movie is like an anti-gun kind of message.
Didn't really think about it that way, but I can see it now.
Yeah, like he literally says, "You are not a gun."
Gun.
Yes. Guns kill.
Guns kill.
So this actually ties back, this is going to get a little sad again, to Brad Bird's sister, who was murdered a couple years before.
Christ.
Yeah, so she was shot. So this would explain why there's such a heavy anti-gun message in this movie, because that obviously wasn't in the book. So he really wanted to make sure that kids understood you aren't a weapon, like you don't have to do these bad things, even if you're capable of doing it. So,
oh my god.
Yeah, so again, there's a lot that is, the heart of this movie is grounded in things, like sad things that have happened, but things that people have learned from and are teaching other people, like how to be better humans, essentially. Anyway, after this, there's a scene that actually was not in the original movie that they added for the special edition. Like Brad Bird and the animators and all of that, they got together and they put in a deleted scene that wasn't originally in the movie, like into the movie. It's a scene where the giant's sleeping and then you see the dreams of the giant.
Oh shit.
And you can see like where he or other Iron Giants, like an army of Iron Giants, are like stomping around on this alien planet and kind of like shooting their lasers and stuff like that. So it's very scary. It's like a nightmare.
You saw me save you. You came from the sky, right?
You don't even know where he came from or what the hell he is.
But that was taken out of the original movie. And they put it into the special edition. So whenever if you go and you see any version of the movie now, I assume that's going to be in there.
Well, I watched it on VHS, so
so it wasn't there.
It was not there.
It wasn't there.
Yeah, this is news to me.
Hogarth gets home, and this is when Kent starts interrogating him. Hogarth, he tells him where the giant is. It's in the scrapyard, and that's when Mansley, he calls the army, and they actually like come. Kent and Hogarth and everybody and the army, they all go to the scrapyard. Dean plays it cool, and he takes them to the Metal Man.
Ah, the Metal Man. Jeez, you were scaring me there for a second. I thought I was under attack or something.
And Giant is just kind of like sitting there still, and he has like all of these other metal bits and pieces all over him.
Art pieces that were just kind of put
So he's pulling it off like, oh, this is just my giant art project. And that Kent Mansley is still just crazy. So
yeah, at this point he's pretty much losing his mind. The paranoia is really getting to the guy.
Yeah, because he knows there's something, but
yeah,
he doesn't have the proof. There, the general, he fires Mansley, and then the army leaves. So Hogarth starts playing with the Iron Giant. This is a little bit later. So they start, doing other kid stuff, and he has one of those like old-timey like little ray guns that when you pushed it, like the little sparks came out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those were great.
That scene got intense though.
Yeah. So he pointed it at the giant, and they were playing like cowboys and Indians or something like that. And then that's when you see his eyes start glowing red again. And that's when he shot a laser at Hogarth, because you can see like it registers like in his like system that there's a gun being pointed at him and being shot at him.
So he needs to kill the threat.
Yeah, so it's reactionary. And he actually does shoot a laser, like a giant laser beam at Hogarth, but Dean like gets him and they duck out of the way.
It was an accident. He's our friend.
He's a piece of hardware, Hogarth. Why do you think the army was here?
He's a weapon. A big
gun that walks.
I'm not gun.
Yeah? What's that, huh? You almost did that to Hogarth!
So he says he's dangerous, and that's when the giant runs away because he wasn't really in control of what he did. So after his eyes stopped turning red, he was freaking out essentially because he just, almost killed his best friend. And so he runs away because he doesn't know what else to do. That's when they realize that the gun was pointed at him, and that's why he started
reacted that way.
Yeah, and he ran towards the town. So if people saw him and the army came and they pointed a gun at him, he was gonna yeah. So you see where we're going with that. So there's two kids on a balcony looking out, and they see the giant in the distance.
Oh, hey, there it is! I see it! It's big. It's walking away. Hey, give me those. Over there. See it? See it? The monster! Holy cow!
So they're leaning over the railing like idiots. Yeah, and then they fall off the balcony, and they're just hanging there, and they're about to fall to their death essentially. This is straight up in the middle of the town. The giant sees this, and he basically does a power slide, and he saves the kids from falling. As they're falling, he catches them in their hand. So even though it's made of metal, so that would still they would still be pretty hurt. So yeah, he saves them, and everybody in the town sees he saves them. So they're a little scared at first, but then they're like, thank you. But also the army sees him. They turn around because they're heading back home, right, wherever army home is.
Wherever they're going.
Yeah, so they see it, and Kent's like, look behind you, there's a giant it's pretty noticeable, a giant metal man standing up in a town. They
just kept straight up ignoring him. And
so the army comes and they start shooting at the giant because he's a giant,
which is not good.
And he starts to run away with Hogarth. He doesn't start changing immediately. His eyes start glowing red, but he tries to control it. Kent says that giant killed a kid, which isn't true.
Beatnik, if you hadn't have
Would you shut up and listen? You gotta make them stop. The giant's got the kid with him.
I'll take care of it. He says the monster's killed a kid. Sir, we must stop it at all costs. Go to Code Red. Repeat, Code Red.
So then the army's like, we gotta go get him, and they send tanks. They got tanks, and they have jets. There's jets there too. So the giant they chase him off a cliff, and he starts falling to his doom. But then it turns out he has rockets in his feet.
He's got rocket boots.
He got rocket boots, and he can fly.
You can fly? You can fly!
So then there's this big chase scene in the sky where the jets are flying around, and he's kind of outmaneuvering them. So that's cool. So this is relating it back to Superman again. So he can fly.
So, that's a
Superman.
nice matching metaphor.
Yeah. So he's shot by one of the jets, and then he crashes. Hogarth is just laying there because they fell from the sky, and it looks like he's dead. And they kind of play it off like Hogarth is dead for a little bit.
Why must they toy with my emotions?
Yeah, and it's the same shot as when he saw the dead deer. So now he knows oh, Hogarth not alive anymore, and he starts to freak out a little bit as the tanks are shooting him still. And then he gets so angry, his eyes completely turn red, and that's when battle mode Iron Giant comes out, and you see his laser cannon arm, and then he has this weird little disc electric
he's got a bunch of weaponry on him,
and he's got these 3 tripod heads on the top, kind of like a World of Worlds kind of deal.
He basically became Inspector Gadget.
Yeah, he's got a lot of different weapons. He's the ultimate weapon essentially.
But does he have toothpaste?
I guess he
does. That's a
does.
very slight reference to the 1999 Inspector Gadget movie. Nobody remembers that because nobody saw it. I get it. Moving on.
But it was supposed to be an oil slick. So essentially at this point he's unstoppable because
Wasn't it also because the little bump popped up finally as well?
Yeah. So he got so angry that the little bump unpopped itself, and his programming readjusted itself.
And finally, when all the shooting's happening, he finally unleashed all the weaponry.
So yeah, the tanks couldn't do anything, and he was tearing it up. So they decide at that point to use the bomb. This thing is obviously, you can't stop it, so you got to
It
throw a
truly-
giant bomb at it.
He truly was a giant weapon to some degree. So
yeah, which
they
is
gotta...
also an allusion to back then because they were very trigger happy.
Yeah.
They were very paranoid that they might have to use that. Hogarth wakes up, so he's not dead. And he immediately knows what's going on. So he and Dean drive off to go to the giant to try and like calm him down. He gets past the army and he like stands in front of the giant, and the giant like holding his giant laser cannon arm like right at Hogarth, and Hogarth's just standing there. And then that's when he says,
No, wait, it's me! Hogarth, remember? It's bad to kill. Guns kill. And you don't have to be a gun. You are what you choose to be. You choose. Choose.
all of the weaponry starts going back into his body, and then he turns into regular giant again. When the army saw that in general, and then Dean explained to them, like, you're pointing a gun at him, like you're shooting at him. That's why he's shooting back. Like, it's self-defense.
It's all just reaction.
Yeah, so then that's when they decide to cancel the missile. But then Kent Mansley, again,
Good
he's
old
crazy.
Kent.
He is crazy. He picks up the phone and like yells, "Launch the missile!"
Hold your fire! The boy's alive? It's a trick! Launch the missile! Are you mad, Mansley? All units, stand down! Rogard to Nautilus. Come in, Nautilus.
This is Nautilus, standing by.
Launch the missile now!
They're like, what? Who's this? What?
Okay.
Oh, we're gonna do it. Okay.
And considering they're located where the giant is, and the missile is going to the giant, then the missile is going for them.
That missile is targeted to the giant's current position! Where's the giant, Mansley? We can duck and cover. There's a fallout shelter right there. There's no way to survive this, you idiot! You mean we're all going to die, Mansley, for our country.
And there's no way to stop it, and it's sad because everybody's kind of like,
Yep,
it's just
everyone's
accepting
just
it. It's like, oh well, this is where we're gonna die.
This is a bummer, man. That's a bummer.
And so yeah, the giant sees that everybody's like kind of sad, and then you see that he realizes that he's the only one that can do anything about this, and that he has to do what he has to do.
He's got to be Batman.
And yeah, that's when him and Hogarth they say goodbye to each other, because Hogarth knows that he's not coming back.
Giant?
Hogarth, you stay. I go. No following.
This is a small thing, but as the giant is flying away, Hogarth says, "I love you."
I love you.
Which is not something that you hear in kids' movies very often. Like that direct statement, like "I love you." Like there's a lot of characters like expressing love, but there's nobody like.
It's rarely outright said.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Like when you think about it, they don't use that term or that phrase like very often, and it's when somebody does say that, it's like super powerful and like really personal. And considering like he hasn't known the giant for very long, and that they're just like best friends, they're not family or anything, but
best buds.
But yeah, they had such a deep connection that Hogarth really did truly love like the giant. The giant flies into the atmosphere. Or he meets the missile.
You are who you choose to be.
And he's not sad about it at all. You don't see like him being sad about it. He was like,
he just kind of accepted what he's doing.
Yeah, and he knows like what he's doing is the
hero.
right thing to do. And then you see the big explosion in the sky from like the characters on the ground, their perspective. Yeah. And I cried when I rewatched it, but I remember crying when I was a kid too, like because that's so sad. Because it's more of a sacrifice kind of thing. Like he didn't just die,
And to see him understand the idea of sacrifice, like, and being a hero like Superman. Like, that's a lot for such short period of time for a robot that was just completely blank.
I don't know. There's something about him.
And we'll
that's
give
very
props
warm.
to Vin Diesel on that. Like,
Yeah.
while he didn't have a lot of dialogue per se, it's kind of like the Groot situation. Truly, just with the voice. Like, he just had hardly anything to do, really. Like, but conveying that much emotion for the handful of words he had. I'm sure not a lot of people recall that this has even been Vin Diesel. Like,
yeah, it's like I didn't realize it was him until like years after I saw it.
Like, so we'll give Vin
Actually,
Diesel
people
that
are
credit.
really surprised that he was in a good movie.
Yeah.
Good one.
So it cuts to the future, probably a couple months later or so, and there is a statue of the Iron Giant in the town that Dean made. And then he hands Hogarth a package that was sent by the general, and it was the only part that they had recovered from the giant. So it was like this screw. So later that night, Hogarth's going to sleep, and he hears a noise, and you hear this little beeping, and the screw is alive, and it's like knocking at the door, so that way it can go out. It has this little blue light that it's like flashing. Hogarth knows from earlier from the train accident that's what happens when all of the giant's pieces are going together. It's kind of like a homing thing. As the screw is rolling, it like cuts to like a bunch of other of the giant's like parts, like a leg and like a part of his hand, and this is like in Antarctica or something, somewhere with a lot of snow. I don't think it says, but yeah, it's just the giant's head just like in the snow, and then you see like a little antenna coming out of the top of his head, and like I said, it's like a homing thing where it's like beeping and everything else is coming towards him. And then he opens his eyes, so the giant isn't dead, and and he smiles, and that's when it ends. It's such a roller coaster of emotions, this movie.
I'm in a glass case of emotion.
Like, you're sad that he's dead, and then you realize he's not dead, so you're sad, but then you're happy.
He was toying with my emotions from the start.
Yeah, and then
good for Warner Brothers for, like, even though we know there is a controversy of how everything was made and everything was kind of a frustrating situation because of the marketing and all the other things involving making this movie. At the very least, Brad Bird seemed to have won a fair amount of the backlash that he got with Warner Brothers making this movie and trying to make it his own and his vision. And he was definitely making this movie for a lot of reasons, including all those messages and that I didn't even know about half of those. So that's like, when I'm looking back at the movie now, I'm just like, shit, that's even more depth to those scenes for me now. So it's just like, wow. I think it's safe to say this is one of those rare moments we can use the word masterpiece.
Yes. It's essentially...
I may not have this on the height of my list in terms of animated films, and say what you will about that, but this is one of those movies where you have to just respect it, whether you enjoy it or dislike it. You have to
I don't
just
think
kind of...
I've ever heard anybody that said they
I don't think so,
like
but I mean, there could be a couple people out there in the world, but I mean, for those that don't like it for whatever reason, you just got to respect a lot of what it does and what it like accomplishes. Good on, I guess, Warner Brothers for still releasing it anyway, but even then that's not saying much.
Like, there was a
'cause
part
they
of the...
basically shelved it.
There's a part of the documentary where after the movie released, Brad Bird went to the theater to kind of like check it out. And then,
so can you imagine if you at least find like vintage memorabilia for that, like the actual poster? That's got to be worth a lot.
Probably, because they didn't make anything.
Yeah, they probably barely made much at all.
There was no toys. Like, that movie should have had a bunch of toys, but...
At least it's getting its due this day, whether you can find it as a Funko Pop or whether you can find it as just
there's
random collectibles that have popped up over the years.
And, I would
hopefully more and more people will keep discovering it if they haven't yet.
This is one of those movies that people like will continue to like show their kids and things like that for like years. There's a reason why I have a giant Iron Giant tattoo on my arm. If you want to see, I'll put it on the Instagram. But anyway, so that was the Iron Giant, and happy 20th anniversary or 20th birthday, Iron Giant. If you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a long time, please check it out, and you'll know what we're talking about. It really
Just go
does.
to your local video stores, kids.
The website is fgapodcast.com. All of the socials are FGA Podcast. So keep up on the Instagram to see what we're going to do next, and we will talk to you in the next episode.
So, at the end of the day, just remember, even if it's a giant robot that you see in the back of your yard, befriend it, teach it to be Superman, and from there, you'll learn plenty of life lessons. Mm-hmm. This has been a pointless lesson that you'll never learn.